Thanks, folks. Well, considering VANTIQ is one of those startup vendors we were just talking about a minute ago, I think I'm going to throw out all my slides, just start over and riff on what we heard for the last half an hour. But so much of what was said actually absolutely rings true for me. And this presentation actually isn't about what VANTIQ does, although it's leveraging a lot of what VANTIQ knows, because we work with businesses, organizations, and cities on helping them become more real-time, so-called event-driven. I'll tell you more about what that means. But on the side, I do something called VANTIQ TV, which is a TV and a podcast series talking to thought leaders in digital transformation, widely defined, nothing to do with VANTIQ. And the topics inevitably become all about culture, about change management, about business models or organizational models. You do need technology, right? And technology isn't always easy. It's getting easier, thankfully. So technology is a critical underpinning, but a lot of the problems, as the gentlemen were saying here, are about what do you actually want to achieve? What do you want the outcomes to be? How is your organization, your city in this case, going to be able to embody the change that's necessary? So I absolutely fundamentally agree with that construct. Having said that, there is technology underneath smart cities as well, and we're going to dive into some of that and what that means. So I'm Blaine Mathieu. I run products and marketing for VANTIQ. We're one of those Silicon Valley startups we were talking about a few minutes ago. And as I said, though, this presentation is not going to be about VANTIQ. You're going to hear more about what we do during the one-on-ones and the workshop sessions and all that good stuff. So let's dive in. We all know, and we heard some yesterday about the paradigm shift that is taking place in cities. And a lot of that is being driven by technology, right? Or the possibilities that the technology allows. IoT is sort of the sub-theme of this conference. A lot of the video we saw this morning was fundamentally all about edge computing. It was about running all of these systems, these cells, basically on the edge in different parts of the city, all working together simultaneously. And that's fundamentally has the potential to change how your city works, like we saw in the video. And then machine learning. I actually hate to use the term AI, artificial intelligence, because that conjures up images of the robots taking over. And I don't know, I'm sure many of you saw that recent video of the robot from Boston, I think it's Boston Dynamics, jumping up the stairs the other day thinking, oh my God, how long is it going to be before he's chasing me up those stairs? But forget about artificial intelligence. That's, there's some interesting sci-fi stories, but the real challenge is being able to make use of all of the data that we have in a more intelligent and effective way using machine learning algorithms, deep learning, neural networks, and we can worry later about the robots chasing us up the stairs. And so fundamentally what that means for organizations, for businesses, and for cities is we're less worried about things, about selling things or providing infrastructure or even providing services, where it's about outcomes, right? How do we deliver outcomes? I think this was brought up yesterday by our friends from Sprint. It's for cities, it's not only about what they buy, it's not about owning things, but it's about renting things, getting things as a service. Increasingly, the infrastructure we're bringing into our cities is being provided by companies, by service providers, not as an object or a product we would buy or a machine we would buy, but as the result of that product. We're renting power by the hour, as an example, and then we're providing those opportunities as a service to our residents. The physical world going to the virtual world is what that says. And so, yes, we're running in the real world, and the real world will be around hopefully forever. But increasingly, we're operating our businesses and our cities through digital twins, right? Through a virtual simulation of that system, of that city. In fact, again, that's what you saw in the video this morning was a kind of digital twin of a city. And so using that digital twin to help first understand how the city works and then eventually help control how that city works more effectively and efficiently is critical. And then finally, I think of this last one as being the most important. And this is where culture and change management is probably most important. It's about moving away from a batch mentality, which means gathering up a list of actions to take or things to do or problems to solve and then doing them later, versus moving to a real-time model where things are happening, data is flowing, events are taking place in real time, and then the actions are taking place also in real time as the events are happening. Fundamentally, most of the disruptive business models, companies, projects, use cases that you can think of in a smart city many of them are about moving from sort of a batch mentality to a real-time mentality, and we're going to talk more about that here in a sec. So fundamentally, I believe if you want to transform your service model, the service model of your city, these are the kind of things that you should be thinking about. So, okay, Uber, right? Talk about disrupting city operations, not just what's been going on with your taxi services, but your complete transportation system in the city is being radically changed. How parking works, bus schedules, of course the taxi industry disrupted by Uber. And fundamentally what Uber did was they turned the transportation industry, especially the taxi business, from a batch business to a real-time business. So it used to be people made phone calls into the taxi service, a central operator queued up that list, tried to find the appropriate taxi. 20 minutes later, you got the taxi. What Uber did was they took a real-time understanding of the state of a very complex system with drivers knowing their location, their status, their availability, knowing on the rider side exactly where they are, what they're doing, how long they've been waiting, their willingness to pay, matching those up in real time, and then orchestrating this complex system, right, to have the most efficient and effective outcome. And that radically changed, really, the entire transportation system in most cities. So they rethought transportation, not only transportation as a service, but transportation as a real-time service. So it's a great idea of how, if you rethink things, you can come up with an interesting solution. So the challenge that you all have as CIOs and technologists trying to drive this transformation in your city is fundamentally, I think, complexity, right? Everything is everywhere. All this technology, as we said earlier today, lots of technology coming on faster than mostly we can absorb. And this last one, this one is really important. So technology is critical, but fundamentally, your smart city operations involve people. You have to figure out how to make your people who work for the city, contractors who help the city, and of course the citizens, the residents, more effective and efficient while they work with and in collaboration with these systems. So it's not about a machine or a system doing something to a person, right? It's about people and machines working effectively and efficiently together, and we'll talk a little more about that. And then finally, you've got 20, 30, 40 years of legacy applications running in your city right now, some of which you've built, some of which you've bought, over the decades, ERP systems and you name it. And you can't just throw them all out tomorrow, right? You have to figure out how to make all this work together so that you can sense the data, the events, the things that are happening in and around your city in real time, analyze them, but not just analytics. It's not good enough to have a dashboard of what's going on in your city with dancing charts and graphs. That's pretty cool. But what you have to do is not just do real-time analytics. You have to be able to take action on what's happening in real time. So it's sensing, analyzing, and acting. This is hard. I'm not telling you. And so from a technology perspective, and again, most of you have a background in technology, this fundamental architecture here, so-called three-tier request-response applications, where some data comes in, it's put into a database, somebody makes a request for the data, they do a search of the database or a query, and then a report comes out. That's really good for certain types of applications, ERP systems and human resource management and those kind of things. But if you're actually trying to run your city in real time, like Uber is running their city transportation system in real time, this architecture will not do it, okay? It simply cannot handle the vast flows of real-time data and allow you to take action as it's flowing in. It's just not, it's not made for that, so that isn't it. So what is it? Well, it's something that that the analysts and the technologists are calling event-driven architectures, event-driven applications. The outcome of that is real-time applications. And the notion here is you've got all this data coming in, of sensors off those lights, those light poles we were talking about earlier. Your business systems are putting off the state of inquiries coming into the city, IoT devices, your employees doing things on their mobile devices. Data is continually flowing in about the state of systems, people, location of things, status of machines. These are events that are flowing in and around your city. And you need fundamentally something that can take that real-time flow of event data, process it as it's flowing in, with some understanding of the context. So you need to understand, is it a good thing that all the lights are green for the next five lights, or is it actually a bad thing because then they're all going to turn red and you're going to stop traffic for the next half an hour, right? So you need to understand, when is the data that's flowing in appropriate, and when is there an issue, a problem, a concern. And then finally, based on that, you take some kind of action in real time. Stop an intruder, reorder some parts, control a system, increase the power to a regulator. And by the way, those actions are also events. So when you're doing the actions, you're also affecting the system. That's why this isn't a left to right flow. It flows backwards as well, right? Because the doing of something, the taking of an action is also an event. So here's a little bit more concrete example of a real-time event-driven application that is relevant to many organizations, including cities. So imagine you've got real-time field service. You've got hundreds of buildings and machines and systems, and you've got a bunch of agents that are running, that are or contractors that are trying to keep those systems running, keep those buildings maintained. And increasingly, we're putting sensors on these buildings. We know what their temperature is. We know what the state is, if there's a water leak or not happening. And increasingly, as we saw in the video this morning, those events, the result of those sensors is not all being sent to one central cloud. There's just too much data, okay? Too much information flowing. You process it on the edge. It might be processed in a small computer, a gateway running in the building. Or maybe it's being processed at the neighborhood level. And that processing is pretty simple. It's just trying to decide, hey, is everything good or is there a problem? If everything's good, throw the data away. You don't have to worry about it. If there's a problem, then you send it up to the central application, which could be running in your private cloud or the public cloud or wherever you want it to run fundamentally. Then you add some context, some contextual data. In this particular example, perhaps there's a database of 500 contractors that have the knowledge to service the particular issue that has happened. And then you can locate who the closest contractor is, send them a notification in real time, have them accept the job, direct them to the location using GPS and their mobile device, and then help them in real time address that situation while the data about it continues to flow in. This is fundamentally very different than how most field service happens today, right? Today, it starts getting warm in the room. There's a problem. Phil runs out and talks to somebody at the hotel. The hotel phones somebody in the HVAC services company. Hopefully they log an issue in some kind of computer system, and maybe later today or tomorrow somebody comes out, and they discover that they don't have the right equipment to fix the thing. So meanwhile, we've had to move to another room. This is, most service and maintenance is far from real time today. But this kind of scenario is absolutely possible, and it's increasingly being done. So what are some examples of smart city operation use cases? And I thought the discussion earlier was right on. Technology is critical. I do believe at the core you need to be using systems that are able to handle the flow of real-time events like we've been talking about. But the place to start is, what do you want to achieve, right? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to make better? What's the outcome? And so, cities have complex supply chains, the management of goods and services, both into the city and then being provided by the city, that could be monitored and directed and changed in real time. Smart utilities, obviously a big use case for the real-time control of power and water and other utilities to your residents. Smart buildings, whether they be the building control systems inside your city halls or other city buildings, or the other enterprises and organizations that are within the city. Fleet management, whether it's your own fleet of vehicles, which most cities have, or thinking more widely about real-time traffic control systems. You can just imagine the opportunities are endless, and that's actually part of the challenge. And we see this on the business side as well. We get a forward-looking CIO or somebody who says, all right, I've been brought in to digitally transform my company, right? Or maybe my city. And usually when we hear that from a CIO, we run as fast as we possibly can, because that generally translates into, my vision is so big, I have no idea where to start. And what we actually tend to look for as a partner with organizations is CIOs and others that have a very small vision, actually. Maybe a big vision, but a very small idea. They've got a project that we think could be achieved in a few weeks, maybe at most a few months, right? Do one discrete particular thing. It might be one subcomponent of any one of the things on this screen here. And if we can find that, then we can help show that real quick success and that expand the use case more widely or move to a different use case. But trying to drive digital transformation initiatives, it's almost a swear word, digital transformation in my mind. Because when I hear that word, it's almost inevitably too big. It's too much, and it's possible, but it almost never gets done, not for technology reasons, but for the culture and change management and all the other things we were talking about already. So, Gartner has been doing a lot of writing on event-driven architectures, and they're using the word business transformation, so that's fine. But fundamentally, thinking about these new types of applications does require a new technology platform underneath them. By the way, I'm a former Gartner analyst, and I'm required by contract to use Gartner for the rest of my life, or I think they'll hunt me down. But I would say, like Stephanie's firm, Compass Intelligence, and the boutique, I know Stephanie really well, the boutique firms are fantastic. So the big gorillas are good, and the boutiques are also really good, so keep rocking it, Stephanie. But yes, I'm required to use Gartner quotes in my slides, so apologies, Stephanie. So what is a fundamental platform that can create these kind of applications that we've been talking about? Well, first at the core, you have to be able to do this real-time event processing, as I said, as distinct from these sort of database-centric applications where all data is put into a database. Of course, the applications and the systems need to be mission critical. You can't take your real-time city building management system down for 2 hours while you push out an update, right? It has to be always on, always available, scalable as necessary. Taking advantage of some of the principles of edge computing, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Human-machine collaboration, again, we'll dive into that. And then it has to be easy and quick. And this relates to a comment that I heard earlier, which is, well, the technology is easy. Well, technology has been there at least. Like you could do these things for decades. Companies, American Airlines built an airline control system 3 decades ago that ran the airline in real time. So it's been possible to build these kind of applications for decades. The technology was there. Sure wasn't easy. Sure wasn't fast. You couldn't do it with any agility. That's for sure. So we'll talk more about that. So first of all, as we mentioned, you have to fundamentally think about event-driven systems, being able to process that data and do that analytics in real time. And again, our friends at Gartner say within the next couple of years, half of new user-facing applications, and that's actually most of the applications or most of the use cases in a smart city environment are user-facing applications, will have to be built as event-driven applications. 50%. Mission-critical applications. So again, we touched on this really briefly. Always on, always available, and the notion of dynamic is the fact that you don't have to take them down to update them. So just like We began bringing, web-based applications into our cities over the last decade or so to fit particular use cases. Well, applying that web scale, which is absolutely critical to be able to handle all the flows of data coming from all these IoT devices and actions that we're taking is really what event-driven apps are all about. Distribution. I'm just actually gonna build this out. So I was actually speaking last week at Fog World Congress in Silicon Valley, a setup very much like this, but about technical professionals primarily that are all very focused on edge computing and the so-called fog, which is taking the edge even out one level further, another further level of abstraction. And fundamentally, this is complex technology like we saw in the video this morning. We have to find ways to make it easier to use, to apply these applications, because many of the things we're going to try to do in a smart city environment are just not going to be possible if you've got hundreds of thousands or millions of sensors all pushing data up to some central system. It's not going to happen. You have to be able to do the real-time handoffs and local analytics, and then decide what you push up out of the fog to the edge, and don't get caught in the blur. Human-machine collaboration. So talked a little bit about this. How are the applications that you build going to make it easy for a person to leverage the increasingly capable, increasingly intelligent systems, machines that are coming on the market today? And when I say a machine, I could mean a robot, an actual physical robot that somebody's working with, but increasingly what I mean by machine is just a software machine. It's just a software system. It's something running on your mobile device, or that you can talk to using natural language processing with your earpiece. Or I was at a Field Service USA event about a month ago. Half the vendors at this event were selling, augmented reality goggles or software systems, right, to use. This is coming very, very quickly. And it's not about getting rid of your people. It's about making them more efficient and more effective, right? Working with increasingly intelligent systems. And this is on the business side, but there's been a lot of focus on how you can make use of these technologies to make your organization much more efficient and effective. Anybody know what this is a picture of? Any guesses from the audience what company this is? It's Tesla, right? Where's this future of this lights-off manufacturing organization with robots building these Model 3s as fast as they can push out? Well, that was actually Elon Musk's vision, and this is where he ended up. Because fundamentally, right now, the best way to make things happen is by machines and people working together efficiently and effectively, and it's going to be that way for a long time to come. So back to, we have the technology, it's easy. Well, it is getting easier, that's the punchline, but historically it has been pretty hard to build these kind of systems that take these flows of asynchronous events. This isn't A, then B, then C, then D, right? A happens, then two C's, B never happens. What do you do if B never happens? How do you build systems that can account for this data flowing in any order at any time? It's pretty challenging. Streaming in real time, massive amounts of data increasing. We've all seen the charts going up and to the right. We talked about why the edge is so important. And then finally, all these systems include people, like we mentioned, and anytime you put a person in a system, it becomes that much more complicated, right? People are the most unpredictable generators of events in a city, in an organization that you can have. So everything gets more complicated if the system has to involve people, and you live that as much as anybody, right? And by the way, it's not just people. As machines become more intelligent, they actually become black boxes. When you have machine learning algorithms making decisions about things, you no longer know why that algorithm actually made that decision. So even the machines are starting to become unpredictable generators of events and decision makers. Oh my goodness. So the way organizations have handled this in the past is to build systems like this. This is a real-time supply chain management application of a global retailer whose businesses are in every one of your cities, and I won't say the name, but they built the system to handle and be able to track and take action on where all the goods are moving around their supply chain. And you can see to build this system, you need a bunch of complex technologies. You need gurus in every one of these technologies. When one of those technologies gets updated, you have to recertify the entire system. Can you imagine any of your organizations or any of your IT partners, even your system integrator partners, being able to do this? Maybe if you're New York City, I don't know, maybe if you got a large enough budget, maybe you could do it, okay? Even if you have the budget like this company did, what you don't have anymore is the time, right? While you're trying to architect and build this thing, Uber is coming in and changing the world overnight, right? So even with the money, you don't have the time anymore. So the good news is, this notion, you again being technologists and CIOs, you're familiar with low-code, no-code application development. That's been around and it's been evolving for the last 2 decades, actually. Organizations and platforms that allow you to visually build applications, abstracting away a lot of the complexity. That's not a new thing. It's been around quite a while. Companies like OutSystems and Mendix, maybe you've heard of them, Appian. But what is new is applying those same principles of low-code, rapid development, abstracting away the complexity, but applying that to the notion of this event-driven real-time area, okay? That's what is actually quite new. And so, whether you might be literally building some of these new systems yourself, or more likely you're working with a partner or maybe a systems integrator or somebody else to do it, the fact that they can now begin to use these kind of tools and technologies to do really interesting use cases that you're thinking about literally in days or weeks, and not in months or years. It's about time, and that does translate into money as well, is really critical, I think, for picking a project, winning quickly, and then expanding from there. It's truly revolutionary, in fact, the difference. I could tell you so many stories. Maybe we'll get a chance later on the panel. So, VANTIQ is obviously one of those platforms which helps you build those applications, and we'll talk more about that later in the event. But that's my take on sort of where the future of technology is going, the underpinnings that can connect these IoT devices, these machine learning systems, and all the other cool tech that we're talking about. Bring it all together and make it happen quickly. So any questions or any thoughts about real-time, event-driven systems and technology for smart cities? Yeah. Oh, one sec.
And if you can say your name and company, that would be great.
I'm Terry Foudre. I'm with Rumble. We are an IoT design and implementation company.
Perfect.
And we partner with a company similar to yours. And so some of the applications that I've seen in real time are, and I'd like to partner with you as well, in St. Louis, the Central West End is a very high-income, high sales revenue area, but with high crime. So they use, a private security firm uses this type of an application to interact with the citizens and the business owners and interfaces with the police as well, all the first responders. So it integrates all of that. So it adds a layer of security and safety to this area to improve the and lower crime rate. And another example is, and I think you're right on, I think this is the most important thing happening in the industry right now. And Vail Resorts is implementing this to manage their entire resort system. I am working with an HVAC company in Kansas City that has 3 problems. Their engagement with their customers is by phone. And so if they call you and they say the tech's on the way and you don't answer the phone, they reroute the tech. And then you've missed the time that you needed that person's. But if they could automate that and send a text, and the person could respond by text, then that would make everything more efficient. That's one problem that this type of thing can solve. The other thing is their inventory, they have it come in the warehouse, and then they send it out to their service people, and they have to track them down wherever they are running around. Well, they're going to use this type of thing to avoid having this equipment come into the warehouse, and it goes directly to the tech's home and is put in a bin. And then the third element is AI will be applied to all their field service people so that right now they have dispatchers, and the board that they're looking at is very complex, and they can't see everybody. So we'll apply AI, and that will match the best tech person with that particular need because of the type of equipment that people have. So I think this is really important, and I assume it overlays all existing and legacy applications and infrastructure.
Well, and so you can do whatever you want fundamentally, right? It's VANTIQ is an application platform to build whatever application you want. But my observation of that is, on the private enterprise side, to many of the examples you gave, many of these use cases are already being done today in real time by companies, enterprises large and small. And I think the challenge is what I see is how can we have fundamentally 3P, right? Private-public partnerships, work together with cities as technology vendors, as systems integrators, with cities to take some of the stuff which is not actually that new, okay? We've been working with companies for years now to do these kind of real-time use cases and help bring it more quickly into the, into the city environment, into the regional environment. I think that's our biggest challenge. So there are lots of real-world use cases out in private business. And now I think, so doing a lot of these things, fleet management and real-time supply chain management and all of this, we're not actually starting from scratch by trying to implement these systems with cities. We've already done it many times in the last couple of years. And I think vendors like us are really willing to work together. And it's one other comment, it's almost never one vendor, right? Nobody's ever going to just work with VANTIQ by themselves. VANTIQ is just one piece, right? We're the platform that you would build this thing on, but you need probably systems integrator, you need somebody to help you with the IoT device management side. There are various elements of the solution that have to be brought together, and we can all work together to help with that. I think there's another question.
Yeah. Hector Dominguez from City of Portland. I was wondering if you could talk about the risks that you see on implementing or getting to this complexity level. So as more devices are coming into our enterprise data management systems, there are more APIs that we need to manage. There are more different protocols. There are more issues around cybersecurity, for instance, and also reality around machine learning is that, yeah, it demands a lot of data, and sometimes many of the real-life applications is really small data, or at least the things that we are looking at. Data quality is also a big deal that has to do with biases and just checking and verifying that those devices are actually sending what they're supposed to be sending. We have a number of issues with different sensors and monitoring systems that when we go and check them, the rate of failure is actually quite high. So should we trust those devices or not? And then when we start thinking about now it's not only APIs, but also that business layer, the one that we need to start checking that this working, is also getting quite difficult. So if you could talk about all these different risks from your perspective.
Okay. So, and thanks, Phil, for giving me another half an hour. That's great. No, it's a big question, and literally we could spend half an hour talking about security and compliance and data quality and all of these things, right? They all are important issues, and the platforms and vendors you choose to work with must have things like security, at very top of mind, not thought about after, not architected in later, but right from the get-go. Okay, but the question, I actually want to spin the question in a different direction. I was speaking at a CIO conference yesterday in Chicago, not smart city oriented, but just CIOs from mid to large size enterprises. And what I've seen there, and I see it, in many cases, I'll be totally honest with you, is CIOs, at least in most private company settings, and I imagine it's true to some degree in the city setting as well, are seeing primarily by the folks, the operations folks, the people that need to run systems and improve operations and create new models. They see the CIOs as roadblocks, right? Not as the ones that are helping to drive digital transformation. And I'm not saying this is you. I'm sure you are driving digital transformation amazingly in your city, okay? But in general, it's not the CIOs, it's not the IT department that are the drivers of digital, transformation initiatives. And that drives the operations folks crazy. The folks that actually own doing something new, interesting, improving the efficiency of something. And in most cases, when I go to field service events or manufacturing events, or I talk to folks that are in charge of the so-called business side of getting something out into the world, I ask them, okay, you've got this great new idea to build this new business model, to drive this new initiative. How are you going to involve IT? They're like, absolutely not. We're definitely not going to involve IT. We're gonna use ghost IT. We're going to hire a systems integrator. We're going to do whatever it takes to work around IT. So we do not have to involve the CIO. And then after a few minutes, they say, yeah, I know we'll eventually have to involve the CIO because of security, because of a few issues. Eventually, you can't get around these guys forever. But I think that's a very sad state of affairs, right? Where many organizations are trying to work around IT, and it should be the CIOs, and I think it is, but it should be even more the CIOs that are leading these transformation initiatives. And yes, you're the best suited to it because you understand the issues of security and compliance and data quality and all the stuff that CIOs know very well, but you also know the city, right? And you can be visionaries helping to push the city in new areas. That's a great concept for what I believe you could be doing. I don't think it's happening nearly enough these days. Because anytime somebody goes to the CIO, the first word out of their mouth is security, data quality, compliance. It's not, how do we transform the world? How do we transform this city to do something that it's just never done before? So anyway, I know we're way out of time, but thank you. Looking forward to talk over the next couple of days.